Welcome to An Unconventional Life, a podcast where we share stories about the crazy 1% out there who earned their doctoral degrees and then went on to use them in crazy, cool, unique, and unconventional ways. Here's your host, astrophysicist turned teacher, author, dissertation coach, and more, Dr. Russell Strickland.
Hi, this is Dr. Russell Strickland here, host of An Unconventional Life, where I feature stories from the unconventional 1%, those folks who not only earned their doctoral degree, but went on to use it in crazy, exciting, and unconventional ways. Today, I've got Dr. Jeremy Weiss with me, and he's done literally thousands of interviews of successful entrepreneurs, investors, CEOs, and we're flipping the script a little bit, and he's interviewing me today. So I want to welcome you. Dr. Weiss, thank you so much for being here.
Dr. Strickland, it's always a pleasure. And I'm excited to dive into today's episode. We were talking before we hit record and, the thought of traditional versus unconventional, what that means, what that looks like. Before we do, I just want to tell people the episode is brought to you by Dissertation Done, which is, I tell people, combination between rocket scientist meets management consultant. It sounds like a great combination to me. And it came from, Dr. Strickland, the pain point you had when you dealt with studying astronomy and astrophysics at the University of Chicago, and you've mentored thousands of people, students over the past 20 years, helping them, working with students from in business, nurses, education, psychology, anyone who studies people in a data-driven way. And so people call you because, bottom line, they're frustrated. And there's a better way when you have someone come in and help in any industry. So check out dissertationdone.com. And if you are frustrated with the process, which I'm sure 99% of people, there is some frustration point, they should call you. Traditional versus unconventional. So talk to me about those two terms and what they mean.
Actually, it ties into exactly what you were just mentioning. So the traditional doctoral student is the kid who goes from grade school to high school to college to graduate school, wants to be a research professor, is going after his PhD or EDD or whatever it might be directly, plans on spending the rest of his life researching, wants to be a professor. That's the track that he's following. That track into academia is what most people consider to be the path for a PhD, but it's not the only one. You see, most of the students that I work with aren't 20-some-year-old kids who are in grad school, but rather they might be in their 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s. In fact, the oldest student I worked with was in her early 80s.
Wow!
And they've been through. They've had some life experience. They've had some career experience, some professional experience, and they're wanting to elevate their career to the next level, or maybe switch tracks a little bit. And so these students, I call them the unconventional doctoral students, and that's where we got the name Unconventional Life for our podcast here, because they're pursuing their doctoral degree in an unconventional way, and then they're using it in an unconventional way. So that's the difference, and it's not just skin deep, because it really goes into how you're going to approach your dissertation, how you're going to go through the process, and what that process means to you when you're all done.
Talk about some of the unconventional paths that people have taken, because I would think, I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and they were like something about normal. I'm like, who wants to be normal? Like, I love the name unconventional, right? Yeah. So what are some unconventional paths that you've seen?
Yeah, you're right. Folks, here's the thing, something that we talked about when I was an undergrad in psychology is everyone wants to be normal, but no one wants to be average. Technically, those are the same thing. So, unconventional things. Gosh, we've had, so some of my students run their own businesses, and by being experts, their businesses are driven by the fact that they are expert in what they do. And having a doctoral degree, having a first name of doctor, really helps to set the bar immediately for prospective clients or customers that this is the person that I'm dealing with, Dr. So-and-so. That really raises the bar for them. Other students, listen, I mentioned that some of our students are, 70s and even 80s. Now, the one lady that was in her 80s, she was doing this because she wanted to. It was a hobby. That's unconventional right there. But,
yeah.
But for a lot of our students who are kind of approaching the end of their career, they want to give back in terms of being able to teach when they retire, because there are a lot of opportunities to do that.
Hmm.
And for folks who have spent a career in business or a career in assisting people, helping people, serving people, to be able to teach others how to do that and give to the next generation, well, most often it requires a doctoral degree, or if it doesn't require it, you probably need one to really compete, to be able to get those jobs and those positions at a university level.
There were some other reasons. We'd talked in the past about someone's towards the end of their career, and people get pay grades raises with different degrees, right?
Well, so this was a unique situation in terms of my students, but I know that it will apply to a lot of folks. This particular student worked for a state institution, a state university. And when you work for that particular state, they have a pension program, and that pension program was driven by the payouts were driven by how much what your salary was, what you earned in your highest 3 consecutive earning years. For most people, that's at the end of their career, but for some people, you have your peak earning years are somewhere in the middle of your career, and it goes down later on. But for most people, it's at the end. Well, in her case, when she earned her doctoral degree, that caused her to level up in terms of her salary. And as soon as you do that, now you're talking about a different level of salary, a real bump, not just a cost of living increase, but a real bump in her salary. She was about ready to retire when she got her doctoral degree. She worked for 3 years to get those 3 years in at that higher level. And then her retirement had bumped up. I don't remember if it was 15 or 20% for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
So just by continuing to do her job, but because she had that benefit of earning more money as a person with a doctoral degree, she was able to reset her retirement for the rest of her life. And she retired immediately. And then she began doing other things that she can consider to be fun and interesting. So lots of ways we can look at this unconventional thing in terms of when you finish school. Absolutely.
And Dr. Strickland, one of the other things that sticks out with the unconventional versus traditional, like if you're traditional path, which is you're just going through and you start in college and then you go on, the life of that person is totally different, right? The person may be married, have kids. Like, talk about what that person's life looks like outside of their schoolwork.
Yeah. So our unconventional students are what I call real adults. Not to insult anybody in their early to mid 20s, but psychologically speaking, you're not an adult yet. And if you're still going to school full time and living in, what amounts to a dorm or an apartment or something like that, you're not really an adult yet. An adult is someone that has, rent or a mortgage and kids or a spouse or a lot of other priorities and responsibilities that they have to balance. When I was originally in graduate school, I actually was a traditional doctoral student. And at that time, I worked hard. I worked long hours, but that was all I had. It was like school and a few friends, and that was it. There were no other responsibilities, no balls that I really needed to juggle. I just put a lot of effort into my studies. Our students that are unconventional students, again, that's not the case. They may have kids, pets, a mortgage, rent, job, family, marriage, all of that. And some of them are taking care of their parents at this point in their life. So all of those other priorities are important, and they have to all be managed while you're earning your doctoral degree. Life doesn't stop just because you're in school. So it's quite a juggling act, and a lot of respect for our students who get through that successfully.
I get overwhelmed just thinking about all of that and going through it while you have all those factors involved, right?
Absolutely.
And would you say, you help them manage that process? What are some of the tips and tricks that you bring to them, that they have all these balls juggling?
So the first thing is, and this is the most important thing, by the way, so hopefully we didn't bury the lead here when we're talking about some other things, but the most important thing for you to listen to concerning this idea of being a traditional student versus an unconventional student. If you are an unconventional student, you have to remember that your goal is to do something with your career, to earn your degree and move on to serve those you were called to serve, to level up your career, to switch tracks, whatever it was that brought you into school in the first place. That's your goal. That's what you're driving towards. If you are a traditional doctoral student, earning the degree is just considered to be one of those things you're going to do. That's not in doubt for you. Instead, your goal is to create a dissertation that's going to serve as the foundation for the research program that you're going to pursue, quite possibly for the rest of your career. So for traditional students, your dissertation is very, very, very important. What you do your dissertation on, how you do your dissertation, what your results are, all very important. It's the launch pad for your career. For our unconventional doctoral students, that's absolutely not the case. Now, since most people give advice as if they're talking to traditional doctoral students, even when they're not, as an unconventional student, you have to be very, very careful about who you listen to. Because if they're telling you to do a number of things, which we talked about before, about how you pick your project and how much it needs to mean to you and how good a job you need to do on your dissertation, if that's the focus, then they're missing the point. For you, the focus is graduating, getting out there so that you can serve other people, so that you can do those career and professional things that you were called to do. So your very, very first thing as an unconventional doctoral student is to make sure that you're focused on getting your dissertation done. We've talked about that before in the context of Dr. Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. We've talked about begin with the end in mind. You have to focus on the fact that you want to get done. That creates a whole different set of priorities for you in the dissertation itself that we carefully help students map out and figure out how to negotiate this dissertation process in an unconventional way rather than a traditional way. Now, Jeremy, I know that I kind of sidestepped your question a little bit, so I do want to answer, what are some of those tips and tricks? One of the things we tell students to do is, listen, this doesn't have to be your whole life. Okay, this is a degree that you're trying to earn. So what we want you to do is budget 10 to 15 hours a week to your dissertation project. Now, that's not nothing. Certainly, when you already have a busy life, that's certainly time you have to carve out. But it's not the 80 to 100 weeks that I invested in my dissertation process when I was a traditional doctoral student. So you can kind of see the difference. When it is your whole life, you're really putting your whole life into it. When it's part of your priorities, then you just have to carve out some time. I suggest people do that kind of 2 to 3 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week. For a lot of students, if they can get up an hour early, hour and a half early in the morning, that time becomes sacrosanct and nobody's going to bother you if you get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to work on your dissertation. So a lot of students can get a lot done there. And if you cringe like I would as a self-described night owl at getting up early like that, I'll tell you, just try it. It actually worked for me to be able to get a lot of projects done by doing that. But if you can set aside an hour, hour and a half in the morning, an hour and a half at night, that's all the time you really need to be able to get your dissertation done and to get it done a lot more quickly than a lot of your colleagues will.
Yeah. No, I like what you said there, because really the foundational piece, Dr. Strickland, is this. It's if you're getting advice from the people who they're maybe giving advice to the majority and you're not the majority, then you start following that advice. You really need specialized advice from someone who understands that particular person's needs. Absolutely. And then it leads someone down the wrong path.
That's right.
So
Absolutely.
I appreciate you sharing that. And obviously, we all need time management tricks, no matter who we are. This has been great. I totally appreciate you sharing the traditional versus unconventional. Dr. Strickland, people can go to dissertationdone.com. Are there any other final thoughts or any other places we should point people towards?
Well, just as I said, own the fact that you are an unconventional doctoral student. If that's in fact who you are, if you are an adult who has gone back to school, whether you're there in the classroom, on the campus, online, whatever the case might be, own the fact that you are an unconventional doctoral student. Think about what your goals really are. And for most of you, if you are an unconventional doctoral student, your goals are not about the doctoral degree program. They're about graduating, about getting out, and about what that degree can do for you. And for most of you, the details of the degree are going to matter much less than the fact that you've earned the degree. So don't put too much emphasis on your dissertation. Don't worry about it being perfect or anything like that. Focus on what do you have to do to get out and to graduate. And if you do want some help, as you said, Jeremy, that's what we do all day, every day, is we help our students to get their dissertations done sooner than they ever thought possible, so that they can get out and get on with their lives.
Check out Dissertation Done.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for being here.
This has been An Unconventional Life. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe now to keep getting inspirational stories of unconventional lives as soon as they're released. Until then, go out and live your best unconventional life.